All right, you guys are good. All loss will be at 12:59. Have a good round.
All right, good morning, everybody. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we're now calling the case of the estate of Genesis Petrillo versus Peonia Estates in the Harper Martini. My name is Judge Fleury, and the scoring judge for this round will be Judge Ross. Judge Russ. Throughout this round, for everyone, including Judge Russ, I remind you that if you're not an active participant, to mute yourself and also keep your video off. And with that, you should have your video currently set so that you can see me and also two of the attorneys up on the screen. And we'll go ahead and proceed with attorney appearances.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, my name is Joshua Wagner, and along with my co-counsel, Victoria Hofflinger and Cameron Viss, we will be representing the plaintiff, Joey Petrillo, as administrator of the estate of Genesis Petrillo, pursuing negligence per se.
Thank you, Counselor. And for the defense?
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Jakelia Fletcher, and I'm joined by my co-counsel, Jabari McRae.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And Nadia Abdul.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And we represent the defendant, Ms. Harper Martini, in today's trial.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, well, that will now move forward with opening statements. I would encourage everyone to go ahead and make their video in the speaker view, which you can do up in the top right corner if you're not familiar with Zoom. And with attorneys, we do remind you to mute yourselves when not presenting. And with that said, now is the plaintiff. Are you ready to proceed with your opening?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Peony Estates was an accident waiting to happen. As you will hear today, this winery, owned by Harper Martini, has a long history of health code infractions, violations, and has displayed a pattern of disregard for safe and sanitary practices in the storage and usage of dangerous pesticides. You will also hear that as a result of these unsafe practices, Genesis Petrillo, the soon-to-be spouse of Harper Martini's child, Casey, ingested a bottle of wine called Cara, which was contaminated with dangerous pesticides. The evidence will show that the bottle of wine was bottled at Peony Estates, was given to Petrillo by Harper Martini, and that Genesis Petrillo's death occurred as a result of ingesting it. Your Honor, members of the jury, Midland's Building Code Section 12100 is a statute that dictates the requirements for storage and usage of pesticides. It states that pesticide chemicals used in accordance with this section shall be identified, held, and stored in a manner that protects against contamination of food, food contact surfaces, or food packaging material. Now, the burden of proof rests with we, the plaintiff, today. As a result, we must show by a preponderance of the evidence that the actions or omissions by the staff of Peony Estates violated this statute and were a direct and proximate cause of Genesis Petrillo's death. Specifically, we must show it to be more likely true than not that Peony Estates violated Section 12100 of the Midlands Building Code, that Harper Martini and the staff of Peony Estates knew or reasonably should have known or been informed of the code infraction and how to use pesticides safely. Third, that as a result of this violation, the wine became contaminated with isophenous pesticides. And fourth, that Genesis Petrillo's death was caused by ingesting the contaminated wine. Now, in order to meet that burden and succeed on our negligence claim, we will be calling three witnesses. First, we will call Riley Adkins O'Keefe to the stand. Ms. Adkins O'Keefe is a health and safety inspector with the FDA. She will testify that as part of her duties, she performed several health inspections at Peony Estates. In the process of discharging her duties, she will explain the occasions on which Harper Martini's winery had previously had wine contaminated with pesticides. She will further explain that on May 8th, 2019, mere weeks before Genesis Petrillo and Casey Soto's wedding, that Peony Estates was found to be in serious violation of four major elements of the health code. These violations included storing dangerous and poisonous pesticides in a facility where open bottles of wine were being processed, and the storage of a particular bottle of wine with a label reading Cara right next to several empty cans of pesticide. Next, Sam Arnold will testify. Ms. Arnold was the caterer at the wedding of Casey Soto and Genesis Petrillo, and she will testify concerning her own observations of the unsanitary storage of pesticides. Further evidence from Ms. Arnold will show that all other food and drink at the rehearsal dinner tested negative for the isophenol pesticide that was found in Genesis Petrillo's system. The Cara wine bottle was the only contaminated food item. Finally, Lonnie Paris will testify. Paris is a freelance investigative journalist who infiltrated and investigated the improper sanitary practices at Peony Estates. In his testimony, Paris will confirm the presence of the bottle of wine labeled Cara and will confirm that that was in fact the bottle given to Genesis Petrillo on the night of her rehearsal dinner before her death. Paris will also detail his observations of the unsafe practices with pesticides at Peony Estates. Now, throughout the course of today's trial, you will see how a consistent pattern of disregard for proper care as applied to the usage of pesticides at Peony Estates has finally resulted in real harm. After all testimony has been given, the evidence will have shown that Genesis Petrillo's death was the unfortunate consummation of that accident waiting to happen. And we will ask that you find in favor of Joey Petrillo and the estate of Genesis Petrillo on the claim of negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And defense, if you're ready to proceed with your opening statement.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, may it please the court. The plaintiff will try to complete a puzzle without all the pieces. On June of 2019, Harper Martini, the owner of Peony Estates, along with her staff members, worked tirelessly in order to orchestrate the wedding of the bride and groom's dreams. The best caterer, wedding planner, and staff were all hired to ensure that such a heartfelt and eventful occasion went smoothly. The staff also ensured that the highest standards for such an important week was also incorporated. Unfortunately, prior to the wedding, the victim and the groom in today's case, Genesis Petrillo, passed away from poisoning. The prosecution here today will simply use Peony Estates as a scapegoat. They'll never give you the ability to see how the victim was killed. The Peony Estates, we will highlight to you that Peony Estates always made sure that the highest qualities and standards were always incorporated. As defense, we will highlight to you that Peony Estates As defense, we will give to you insight about how the environment and numerous health precautions were taken into consideration ever since the start of Peony Estates. We will also talk about how the poison found in Genesis Petrillo's body could not have been the sole contributor to his death. Ladies and gentlemen, my co-counsel and I represent Peony Estates against a claim of negligence. The plaintiff here today must prove that the estate violated a safety statute that resulted in the death of the victim. In today's case law, the plaintiff has the burden of proving 4 elements of negligence. Due to the stipulation, the second and fourth elements have already been acknowledged, yet the plaintiff must also prove all 4 elements, but they won't be able to do so. And we will showcase that to you by introducing 3 witnesses. First, Blair Osborne, a longtime wedding planner with Peony Estates, will come before you and detail to you her time at Peony Estates. She will talk about how she always saw the highest standards incorporated for all the events she's hosted there. Blair Osborne will also talk about how she always saw Peony Estates incorporate the highest quality as well as cleanliness when it came to hosting the events. Later on, Austin Lewis, an employee of the estate, will give you firsthand access to the environment of Peony Estate. Ms. Lewis will talk about how she always saw the highest standards incorporated by the estate. Ms. Lewis will also talk about how, as head winemaker, she oversaw the pesticide storage and how she made sure there was no room left for error. Lastly, Dr. Cannon, the head medical examiner who examined the body, will come before you and detail you the findings of the poison found in the victim's body. Dr. Cannon will talk about how the poison found in the victim's body could have not been the only sole contributor to the victim's death. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the plaintiff will try to complete a puzzle without all the pieces. They will try to showcase to you a story that is one-sided, closed-minded, never allowing you to see the bigger picture. At the end of today's case, my co-counsel, Jabari McRae, will come before you and ask you to review all the evidence and key facts and puzzle pieces and ask you to render the verdict of not liable. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. We'll now proceed forward with the plaintiff's case in chief. Now, before doing so, I would encourage everyone to switch their view to the gallery view, which you can do again up in the top right corner. That will allow you to see not only the attorney asking questions, but also the witnesses and any exhibits or anything else of the like. And with that, plaintiff, if you are ready to proceed with your first witness, please do so.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Riley Adkins O'Keefe to the stand.
Hi, I'm Riley Adkins O'Keefe.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Absolutely, please proceed.
Now, would you please state your name for the record?
Riley Adkins O'Keefe.
And what is your occupation, Ms. O'Keefe?
I'm a senior health and safety inspector for the Rapid River County Department of Health and Environmental Safety.
Do you have any specific certifications or training for that role?
Yes, in August, I actually passed my annual certification as a Rapid River County Department of Health and Environmental Safety Food Service Inspector. And earlier in May 2020, I renewed my certification as a Food and Drug Administration Food Service Safety and Bioterrorism Prevention Inspector.
And how long have you had your job?
I've worked for the DHES since September 2013, and I've held my current position as Senior Health Inspector since September of 2017.
And Ms. O'Keefe, what is your educational background?
I received my Bachelor's of Arts in English from Xavier University, and I got my master's degree in viticulture and enology from Midlands University, Rapid River Valley.
So what is the nature of your job and what are your current duties as an inspector?
DHES commonly conducts health and safety inspections on behalf of the FDA since we became an official designee in 2010. I myself have inspected over 170 wineries throughout my time as a health and safety inspector.
So I'd like to talk about that. What exactly does an inspection of a winery normally consist of?
So when I first inspect a winery, I begin by presenting my credentials to a staff member and then inform them that I will be inspecting the premises and conducting interviews to ensure that reasonable measures and precautions are taken for disease control, cleanliness, maintenance of the grounds and plant, and sanitary operations. If I find any violations of code, I issue a notice of violation.
Now, in your time as an investigator, have you ever had cause to interact with Peony Estates or Harper Martini?
Yes, I've had to conduct several inspections of Peony Estates over the last several years and have had cause to interact with Harper Martini.
And when did you first conduct an inspection of Peony Estates?
My first inspection was November 5th, 2015.
Could you describe that in that inspection?
Yes, I began by inspecting the premises, including the vineyard, production facilities, storage spaces, and bottling area. None of these areas showed any violation of disease control or cleanliness requirements. Everything seemed to be well organized and operated, and the employees seemed to be following all necessary protocols. The only problem I found was some pesticides stored in a shed that was too close to both the wine production area and the winery's kitchen.
Now, what kind of pesticide was used at Peony Estates from your observations?
Peony Estates uses Bug Off, which is an isofenfos-based pesticide, and that was the only pesticide used at Peony Estates from the time of my first inspection in 2015 to the time of my most recent one on May 8th, 2019.
Did you instruct Harper Martini regarding the storage and usage of pesticides at that time?
Yes, I informed her that pesticides are a poison and must be handled very carefully and stored appropriately. That appropriate storage of pesticides means to keep them a minimum of 50 feet from any wine production or storage facilities. That the use of pesticides must also follow strict protocols to ensure no contamination of food or beverages occurs.
Now, you mentioned that you conducted multiple investigations at Peony Estates. When did you next return?
I then returned July 12th of 2018.
What prompted you to conduct that inspection?
We received an anonymous tip that Peony Estates had an ongoing problem with pests.
And did that tip prove to be true?
Yes, in the cellar I discovered various pests, including beetles and mites. Based on the number found in my training and experience, I concluded they had been present for at least 4 to 8 weeks.
And did you do anything else during that inspection?
Yes. Following protocol, I collected samples of wine from 20% of the barrels present. I then informed Harper Martini that the presence of pests or pesticides in stored wine grounds was for a serious violation and that laboratory analysis would determine whether or not Peony Estates was in violation of health codes.
Your Honor, may I constructively approach the witness with what has been entered as Exhibit 9?
Yes, please do so.
Thank you. So, Ms. Adkins O'Keefe, I believe you have what has previously been entered as Exhibit 9 in front of you.
Yes.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is the analytical report of the samples of wine I collected from Peony Estates on July 12, 2018.
And could you tell us what those results show?
Yes, the analysis indicates a high concentration of isofenfos, the same kind of pesticide that is always used at Peony Estates.
Your Honor, at this time, may I approach the witness with what has been previously entered as Exhibit 10?
Yes, please do so.
Now, Ms. O'Keefe, are you familiar with that exhibit in front of you?
Yes, it's another laboratory analysis of wine from Peony Estates.
And how are you familiar with it?
The Rapid River Police Department forwarded this analysis to my office following the death of Genesis Petrillo.
And what does this analysis show?
This states that the sample taken from inside an empty bottle of Cara wine contained levels of isofenfos that far exceeded the FDA's maximum allowed.
And did you return to Peony Estates after 2018?
Yes, my last inspection was performed on May 8th, 2019.
How did that inspection go?
Well, to put it simply, it did not go well. I found 4 major health code violations. The first one was 3 containers of pesticides were present in the bottling facility. The next one was the floor drainage system in the bottling room was not adequately draining excess liquids. The third one was I observed a single bottle of Cara wine sitting on a shelf by itself where the pesticide canisters were. This was hazardous given the proximity of pesticides. Finally, I learned that employees were confused about safe handling of pesticides and did not know the importance of keeping pesticides away from the beverage production and processing areas.
Now, what employees specifically are you referencing when you say that they were confused about the safe handling of pesticides?
Austin Lewis, as well as Kirby Doolittle.
Did you speak to these employees?
Yes, I asked Harper if I could speak with them in order to further understand the pesticide storage process that the employees were actually following, as I had concerns about the convenience of the pesticide storage shed.
And did you learn anything from either of these employees that informed your investigation of Peony Estates?
Yes.
Did you rely upon those interviews in determining your opinion upon the code compliance of Peony Estates?
Yes, that is why they were including in my report of all relevant facts and findings.
Thank you. So are interviews like these that you conducted common procedure for a health and safety inspector?
Yes, in addition to the observations we make ourselves, it is important to verify that sanitary operations are actually being implemented.
So in light of that, what did you learn from Harper Martini's employees?
Based on my conversation with Austin Lewis previously, it was clear to me that employees were not consistently following the sanitary processes that Harper Martini had assured me they were. Additionally, at that inspection I conducted on May 8th, 2019, I spoke to an employee named Kirby Doolittle. He informed me that he was confused about the safe handling of pesticides and did not know about the importance of keeping pesticides away from beverage production and processing areas.
Now, what, if anything, did you do as a result of that information?
I instructed Harper that she ought to instruct her employees regarding the dangers of pesticides and safe handling and storage procedures.
Thank you, Ms. O'Keefe. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Counsel for the defense, if you'd like to cross this witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. O'Keefe, you performed 3 inspections at Peonia State?
Yes.
Okay, let's go over those inspections. You first performed one on November 15th of 2020.
November 5th of 2015.
Oh, pardon. Yes, November 5th of 2015. And that's where you found the wine pesticide storage to be inadequate.
Yes, they were not stored at a minimum of 50 feet.
And you later saw Harper Martini move it to an acceptable location.
Yes.
And you later approved Peonia Estates for their use of pesticides.
Yes.
And you also approved them for their storage of the pesticides.
Yes.
And you saw that the wine production faculty had no issues or concerns.
No.
You also saw that the bottling facilities were well organized,
Yes, they were in compliance.
along with the barrel cave,
Yes.
as well as the wine and packaging storage being well sanitary.
Yes.
And therefore, you approved Peonia Estates for their wine production.
Yes.
And you found no code violations for their 2015 inspection.
No, there were no wine violations in 2015.
Thank you, Ms. O'Keefe. Let's move on to your second inspection on July 12th of 2018. You asked Harper Martini to show you the wine cellar.
Yes.
And you saw that this process was complicit with the state standards.
Yes.
You saw that the storage of the pesticides were also acceptable.
Yes.
You later spoke to an employee about these procedures, Austin Lewis.
Yes.
You found that these procedures had no violation of any code.
No.
You later saw that there was an acceptable amount of containments.
Yes. They had an unusual amount, but it was not the maximum.
Right, so acceptable amount.
Yes.
And therefore, you found no code violations for your 2018 inspection of Peonia Estates.
That's right.
You later did an inspection on May 8th of 2019.
Yes.
And that's where you found health code violations.
Yes, I found 4.
4 of them. You gave Peonia Estates specific guidelines because of these health code violations you found.
Yes.
You warned Peonia Estates that they would lose their bottling operations if they did not cooperate.
Yes.
You told Peonia Estates that they had to move their pesticides 50 feet away from the beverages or food placed near them.
Yes.
You stated that they must also train their employees to handle the storage of the pesticides with care.
Yes.
But Peonia Estates later had a pending inspection within 45 days.
Yes.
Therefore, you did not give them another inspection.
No.
You're unsure if Peonia Estates followed with that 50 feet requirement.
Yes.
You do not know if they were able to train the employees correctly on the storage of their pesticides.
Yes, but I did speak with the employees and instructed them on how to carefully handle pesticides.
Right, but after inspecting them for a third time, you're unsure if they did or did not adequately follow that.
Right.
But you did warn them that if they don't, they will lose their entire production of wine making.
Yes.
So therefore, you inspected the Peony Estates 3 times, but you've never suspended Peony Estates for any of their wine production,
No, I have not.
never suspended them for their bottling operations.
No.
You can't tell the jury that Peony Estates had violated any FDA.
Can you repeat the question?
You can't tell the jury that the Peony Estates is in violation of any other reasonable measures after your third inspection.
Right.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any redirect from the plaintiff?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Well, with that, the witness may step down, and plaintiff, you may proceed with your second witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call Sam Arnold to the stand.
Very well, and you may proceed when the witness is on the stand.
I'm Samuel Arnold.
All right. Please state your name and occupation for the benefit of the court.
My name is Sam Arnold, and I am Rapid River Valley's most prestigious food service provider.
How did you first come into contact with Peony Estates?
I first came into contact with Peony Estates when I catered their one-year party. It was also the one-year anniversary of my catering business as well.
And what did this event do for you?
It brought a lot of attention to my business, got me a lot of publicity, more customers, which was great. And I still actually have Peony Estates as one of my biggest clients, and I cater many weddings and events held at Peony Estates.
Would you say that you owe Peony Estates for your continued success?
I owe them some of my success. While I'm grateful for the opportunity that Peony Estates has given me, I would say that a lot of my success is also due to my own cooking abilities.
Do you feel indebted to Peony Estates in any way?
No. While I'm grateful for them, I do not feel indebted to them in any way.
How many times, if any, did you notice any pesticide violations while working at Peony Estates?
There was one time I noticed a pesticide violation while working there in late November.
Could you detail this interaction for the benefit of the court?
When I arrived, I saw Harper walking from the vineyard with a backpack and a sprayer of pesticide. I greeted Harper and we walked into the kitchen. She placed the pesticide and the backpack in the corner of the kitchen. While I politely reminded her that pesticide is no place in a kitchen, she then picked up the backpack and carried it through a door labeled employees only, which I know from experience being there is the bottling room for the wine.
Did you ever have any other odd interactions at Peony Estates?
I did.
And could you detail that as well?
When I went to Peony Estates in February 8th of 2019, I noticed that the kitchen was unusually clean and relatively well organized.
And why is that odd?
Well, this is odd because normally the kitchen in Peony Estates is never up to my satisfaction. They never label their containers, and it's borderline unacceptable for someone of my stature.
Was there anything else odd about this interaction?
There was. I briefly mentioned to Harper that the kitchen looked better than usual that day, and she informed me that they were anticipating a suspicion. She informed me that—
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
May I, Your Honor?
Absolutely, please.
This interaction was directly referenced in the affidavit with direct quotes from Harper Martini, and the witness was directly involved in the conversation.
How does that help you to overcome the hearsay objection?
It was something spoken directly to Sam Arnold, and and that Harper Martini is a party opponent.
Is the statement that the witness is asserting, was it a statement from Harper Martini?
It was. In Sam Arnold's affidavit, she has direct quotations from this encounter. It would be found in line 126 of the affidavit.
All right. Well, Counselor, for the defense, do you agree that this is a statement by Harper Martini?
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes, please.
This is an outer court statement used for the truth of the matter. Harper is not here to testify whether or not those statements were made to Sam Arnold, so they are indeed hearsay.
But Counselor, this is a statement by Harper Martini. You do not dispute that?
I dispute that.
All right, being that Harper Martini is a party opponent and therefore this is not hearsay under the rules of hearsay, I will overrule the objection. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Was there anything else odd about the interaction?
Yes, there was. I mentioned to Harper that the kitchen was looking unusually well that day, and she informed me that they had been expecting a surprise inspection. Harper informed me that Austin Lewis has a friend within the FDA that informs them prior to surprise inspections so that they have time to prepare. And she also informed me that when anyone tries to complain, they get the name, even if they try to complain anonymously.
Thank you. Were there any other times that you noticed pesticides stored improperly?
There was one more time before the wedding that I noticed.
And how did you notice this?
When I was leaving the kitchen, I noticed a single bottle of Cara wine sitting next to cans of pesticide.
What date was this?
I believe it was June 7th, 2019, the day before the wedding.
And do you know, like, if any other people were negatively affected by the food you prepared for the rehearsal dinner?
To my knowledge, no other people were negatively affected by the food I prepared for the dinner. The only person harmed was Genesis, and she was the only one drinking that single bottle of wine.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. And defense, your cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Hi, Sam Arnold. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I would like to turn to your relationship with Miss Harper Martini. You met Harper Martini in 2016, is that correct?
That's correct.
You owe some of your success to Harper Martini and Peony Estates.
I would say that I owe some of my success to them, but not all of my success, no.
I want to turn your attention to an event that happened in late November of 2018. You saw Harper Martini spraying the vineyard with a pesticide, correct?
Correct.
And you saw Harper place the pesticide in the kitchen corner when coming inside, is that correct?
That is correct.
You promptly told her that that is not safe, right?
That is correct.
She promptly removed it from the kitchen.
She
Is that correct?
promptly removed it, that is correct, but she removed it and brought it down the hall to the area where bottling occurs.
Yes. She brought it through the employees only door. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The door that leads towards the bottling area.
That
Is
is
that correct? But you didn't see Harper Martini go into the bottling area with the pesticide. Is that correct? Could you repeat your statement?
I did not.
Let's turn to the rehearsal dinner of June 7th of 2019. You went into the kitchen upon arrival, is that correct?
That is correct.
You saw Harper Martini in the kitchen.
That is correct.
You noticed a canister of bug-off spray sitting on one of the counters in the kitchen, is that correct?
Yes.
You don't know if the canister was full or empty.
I don't know.
You don't know if it was closed or open.
I don't know. All I know is that I saw it sitting next to that single bottle of wine.
No, thank you for your time, Sam.
Thank
Arnold. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. Plaintiff, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. While working at Peony Estates, was the kitchen normally clean?
No, the kitchen was never up to my standards as a chef. It was always very disorganized, and there was never any labels on their canisters.
And you did find pesticide in the kitchen on more than one occasion, correct?
That is correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any recross based on that short line of question?
Yes, Your Honor. Sam, you testified that you saw that Peony Estates was never up to your standard, correct?
Correct.
Never were up to your standards, is that correct?
Correct, unless it was that one time before the surprise inspection in which they anticipated and cleaned beforehand.
But you still did business with Peony Estates for years, is that correct?
That is correct, but I usually used my own kitchen instead of using Peony Estates' kitchen because it never met my standards.
But even though it wasn't up to your standards, you still decided to do business with Peony Estates.
I did. They were my best client.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. The witness may step down, and plaintiff, if you're ready to proceed with your third witness, please do so.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Lonnie Paris to the stand.
Mr. Paris, and plaintiff, you may proceed when you're ready.
Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
Sure. My name is Lonnie Paris.
What do you do for a living, Lonnie? What do you do for a living, Lonnie?
Excuse me, could you repeat that?
What do you do for a living, Lonnie?
Sure. My life has been dedicated to exposing the injustices that corporate America has committed, especially towards our environment. I double majored in journalism and environmental science at Northwestern University, and I worked for BNN as a journalist. And then in 2018, I became a freelance investigator. I consider myself a journalist by trade and an environmentalist at heart.
How did you first hear about Peony Estates?
I was with BNN in 2016, and that's when I received a call from Danny Francesio, who's the owners of a Midland winery named Rosie and Pedro. And Danny had called to tell me about a tip regarding Peony Estates.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement for the truth of the matter, sir.
Plaintiff, your response?
Your Honor, this statement is actually being used to explain why Lonnie Paris took action in response to this tip rather than explaining the contents of the tip or the truth of the tip.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Absolutely.
This statement is still an out-of-court statement. It's still hearsay, and it doesn't fall under any exception at all. This isn't a party opponent. It meets no exception.
Counselor, the plaintiff, could you point to the specific exception?
This statement is not going to the truth of the matter, but rather to the impression that Lonnie Paris received from the statement. Therefore, it is not hearsay and is an exception.
I'll allow it at this time, but your objection is noted.
Yes, Your Honor.
What did this tip make you do in response?
Sure. Well, I receive tips from businesses often about their competitors. However, I did my due diligence and I took the tip seriously. So I first did some initial research about Peony Estates online regarding their health code violations, but I wasn't able to find anything online about people getting sick from the wine. And unfortunately, I had to continue working on one of my other cases shortly after.
The next time you worked on the Peony Estates story?
That would be in July of 2018. I was working as a freelance investigator. So I came across some of my old notes about Peony Estates from BNN, and I decided to continue working on the story.
What did you do to find facts about this story?
First, I did an online search, but I did not find any reports of poisoning. However, I did find that Peony Estates is located right next to Solove Swamp.
significance of Peony Estates being located near a swamp?
You see, I have previously visited swamps for other pieces, and they tend to be swarmed with insects, and that would explain Peony Estates' use of insecticide.
Objection, Your Honor. This is may I be heard?
Yes, absolutely.
This is an improper opinion. Just because Peony Estates is near a swamp, there's no scientific evidence that connects those two swamps. There's never been any test done to analyze the similarities of those swamps to even make a factual assessment, and furthermore lacks foundation regarding that scientific connection.
Counsel for the plaintiff, your response?
Yes, Your Honor. Lonnie Paris is a lay witness and has been to swamps and personally experienced them before, including this specific swamp, Solov Swamp, and experienced the insects at this swamp.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
This witness has no expertise to diagnose a swamp as infested or not, and furthermore, understanding the need for pesticide regarding what situations pesticides are needed or not needed in a commercial setting, nor expert regarding how to go about doing that.
Yeah, I'm persuaded by the defense's argument that this is, and plaintiff, as you know, this is a lay witness. So if you would like to re-ask the question to exhibit a lay response, being a factual response and not the witness's opinion, then you're free to do so. But otherwise, the objection is sustained.
Have any experience with insects when you were at Solov Swamp?
Yes, I have. So when I've gone to visit Peony Estates before, I have just seen the amount of insects just swarming me personally and just the entire area before on multiple occasions.
And what did you do next to work on your story?
I decided to visit Peony Estates personally. So my first visit was on July 13th of 2018. It was only a tour of the publicly accessible areas of Peony Estates, and I didn't find anything particularly out of the ordinary.
Again?
Yes, on July 16th of 2018, I took a guided tour at Peony Estates. So I joined a tour. It was led by Drew Matasokas, but I later snuck into an employees only door near the kitchen.
Did you find anything behind that door?
Yes, I found myself in the bottling area. There were lots of discarded canisters of pesticides that were labeled bug off. They were scattered in the back rooms. They appeared to be new. And I also found a memo in Harper Martini's office stating that Peony Estates had recently ramped up pesticide usage.
Objection, Your Honor. May I be heard?
Yes, absolutely.
This witness is testifying to a document that has not been admitted to evidence.
Response from the plaintiff.
Your Honor, this witness is going to testify to their response to seeing this document rather than using it for the truth of the matter.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yes, this witness is going to be testifying to their response to seeing this document rather than the truth of the matter on the document.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Testifying to the contents of this document is still testifying to evidence that has not been admitted. I have no problem once counsel is able to properly admit this into evidence.
Plaintiff, do you have, is it your plan to enter this this document into evidence?
No, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself?
No, Your Honor.
All right, let's move on from this, and your objection is sustained this time.
Were you caught after this?
No, I put all the documents back and I escaped the bottling area. I was not caught.
What did you find overall?
After doing my own investigation, I realized that Danny Francesio had been overzealous with the 2016 tip. However, the pesticide usage had clearly increased since then due to the 2018 infestation, which is why I was keeping a close eye on the 2019 batch of wine from Peony Estates.
How does the 2019 batch of wine connect to the pesticide usage in 2018?
I learned in the guided tours at Peony Estate that their wine is created in a one-year batch. This means that the grapes from 2018, which is the year they increased pesticide usage, would be used to create the wine for 2019.
What else did you learn on your visits to Peony Estates?
On May 6th of 2019, while touring Peony Estates, I learned that a surprise inspection was supposed to come through Peony Estates.
What did you do after that?
On May 8th of 2019, I returned to Peony Estates after being informed about the date of that surprise inspection from one of my FDA sources. I snuck in again and I found that the bottling area had been completely cleared out and cleaned.
How about your next visit?
On May 30th, I snuck around the winery under the guise of being an assistant photographer for the wedding prep. I was able to access everything in the winery except for the bottling area, which was closed for maintenance. I wasn't able to find much.
Did you visit on the day of the rehearsal and rehearsal dinner?
Yes, I visited the winery on June 7th of 2019. This time I disguised myself as a member of the catering staff. I used lock picks to get into the more heavily secured bottling area, and I found a single bottle of 2019 Cara wine sitting on the shelf. I also found a partially full canister of pesticide near the bottling station when I later trailed Martini back to the area.
See this bottle again?
Yes, I saw Martini gift the bottle to Genesis Petrillo after a short speech. Later, I saw Petrillo on the dance floor and they seemed disoriented.
Your Honor, may I constructively approach the witness with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 7?
You may.
Are you familiar with this document?
Yes, this is Genesis' death certificate. I read this document in the process of my investigation.
What happened the day after, June 8th?
On June 8th, I learned that Genesis Petrillo had died from pesticide poisoning from reading Petrillo's death certificate.
You know what happened to the rest of the 2019 Cara wine batch?
I was told by Peony Estates head winemaker that the rest of that 2019 Cara batch had been disposed of. So the only person who drank that wine was Genesis, who died of the pesticide poisoning.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. Defense, cross.
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
Absolutely, proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Paris, you were recently fired from your previous job, correct, at BNN?
I was let go because of budgetary reasons, correct?
And that was the job where you were paid for exposing company secrets, is that correct?
That involved part of my job was exposing the secrets of corporate America. I was especially focused on environmental problems.
So that's a yes, your job was to expose company secrets, is that correct?
Yes, injustices.
Okay, and isn't it true you then went to work for those same companies, helping them expose their competitor secrets?
I was employed by some of the companies that I previously exposed.
And so you went to work for those companies to help them expose their competitors, correct?
I worked for some of them, yes.
Now, isn't it true that you deceptively made your way onto Peony Estates property using false identities?
I went under guises on some of my visits, and sometimes I went just as myself.
Most of
Objection,
the
Your
time.
Honor. Relevance?
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Please.
This goes to the witness's credibility. The witness's credibility is always relevant at all times, Your Honor.
A response plan.
The witness's use of different clothing items to get into Peony Estates does not necessarily have any effect on the credibility of the witness's affidavit or statements in this case.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Deceptive methods of using these identities, that is what goes to the credibility. Nothing else is in contention.
I'll overrule the objection at this time. Please proceed.
Now, on July 19th, you even blackmailed Austin Lewis, is that correct?
I told him that he threatened to take me to Harper Martini, and I simply told him that if he did, that I would tell Harper Martini about the times I was let onto the property. So I wouldn't call it blackmail, but I told him, if you take me to Harper Martini, I'm going to tell him everything and the fact that you've let me on multiple times and what I've been able to find.
And that's where you threatened Austin's job, is that correct?
I mean, I simply said that is what I will tell Harper Martini. Whether or not he would be chosen to be fired for that, I don't know.
Okay, and on July 13th, you examined all public areas throughout the winery, correct?
Yes, I did.
You didn't see any pesticides anywhere in sight in those public areas, correct?
Not on July, on the date that you mentioned.
And no pesticides were found in the kitchen either, correct?
Not on the date mentioned.
And isn't it true that on that day you found no rules being violated? as far as you were concerned?
I'm not on the date mentioned. Of course, I'm not the inspector.
Understood. In fact, you absolutely found nothing out of the ordinary on that day, correct?
Correct.
And you made your way back to Peonia Estates 3 days later, correct?
Yes.
And when you stopped to get gas, that's when you saw pesticides and insects at the gas station, correct?
Specifically, I saw insects at the gas station that were swarming me.
But the previous visit on July 13th, you didn't see any pests at Peonia Estates, correct?
Any pests?
No.
Is that what?
Yes.
I can't necessarily say whether or not I did. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary.
You didn't find any insects or bugs?
Perhaps there was some, not to my knowledge, I don't remember insects.
Did you see insects on your visit on July 13th?
Asked and answered.
May I respond, Your Honor? The witness hasn't answered. The witness answered by saying that they can't recall. So I'm just asking for clarity, whether they can or cannot recall what they saw.
I'll let you ask your question one more time, and then we'll move on.
Did you see insects or pests on July 13th?
I do not recall whether or not on that specific date. However, as mentioned, I remember later on being swarmed by insects when I was at the gas station.
I'm sorry. And on July 16th, that's when you made it into the wine bottling area and you didn't see anything out of place, correct?
What date again? Can you repeat the question?
On July 16th, when you made into the wine bottling area, you didn't see anything out of the place until you went deeper into that area, correct?
So when I went into the employees only area, I did see a lot of discarded canisters of pesticide that were labeled bug off. And then I also saw the memo.
And these canisters were deep in the restricted area past the wine bottling area, correct?
They were in the bottling area. They were behind the employees only door. In that bottling area is where they were all about the floor, all the bug off canisters.
Is it your testimony today that the wine canisters were not in the restricted area?
No, Your Honor, they were behind the employees only door in the bottling area.
In the restricted section, correct?
As I've said, they were behind the employees only door in the bottling area.
Your Honor, could you ask the witness to answer with a yes or no? The witness is not answering my question whether or not this was in the restricted section. I'm just asking for a yes or no whether or not this was in that area. The other areas I'm not asking about.
Counselor, you might wish to reframe your question to get the particular yes, no that you're trying to get. From what I understand, you've asked if it was in the restricted area, and the witness has responded that it was in a particular area. So perhaps reframing your question may elicit the answer that you're looking for.
Understood. When you saw these pesticide bottles, they were new and unopened, correct?
Yes, they appeared to be new and unopened to my knowledge.
You agree if they had been using pesticides for years, you would have expected years worth of canisters, correct?
I cannot say whether or not about the previous years. All I can talk about is the fact that they were new at that specific time, these certain bottles of bug off. And also that I know that they were used, those bottles, in the future.
Is it your testimony that those that you expected, that you did not expect years worth of canisters to be spread around in that back room if Peonia Estates had been using pesticides in the past?
Can you rephrase the question?
You agree if they had been using pesticides for years, you would have expected years worth of canisters, correct?
I cannot say whether or not. I mean, they could have, if they had hypothetically used them in the past, they could have thrown them away by then. I have no way of knowing whether or not about the previous year's worth of pesticides, whether or not that happened. All that I can testify is what I saw, which is that I saw these, what appeared to be new unopened bottles of bug off scattered in this bottling area.
Isn't it true as of May 6th, you saw no evidence of pesticides being used improperly?
I specifically was not there seeing the pesticides being used on the products themselves.
Is it safe to say that as of May 6th, you visited Peonia Estates over 30 times?
I am not sure exactly of the specific number. I went many times to Peony Estates.
From July 2018 to May 2019, isn't it true that you visited Peony Estates twice a month for that entire year?
Yes, I usually try to go twice a month.
And so out of those at least 24 plus visits, you saw nothing but brand new pesticide bottles in that back room, correct?
All that I specifically remember from my testimony is the fact that on July 16th, I saw the discarded canisters of pesticide scattered in the back room. That was specific from July 16th. I didn't always go into that room on every single other of the visits that I went on.
So out of those 2 visits a month, that was the only occasion where you saw the pesticide containers being improperly stored, correct?
Not necessarily. I didn't go into that back room every single time. But what I can testify to is the fact that on July 16th, I did see those canisters.
And you didn't see pesticide canisters anywhere on Peony Estates property when you visited over those 24 times, did you?
On the property outside of the room, is that what you're asking?
Yes, anywhere out of place.
Well, I saw them in that room, which actually is out of place. They're not supposed to be in the bottling area.
I'm sorry, outside of that one occasion is what I was asking. My apologies.
Again, as I mentioned, I'm not involved in the agricultural process, so I didn't see them use the pesticides. That's not what I did, but I did see them improperly stored in the bottling area, scattered, unorganized on the floor.
Only on July 16th, correct?
That is the specific time when I noted it.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any redirect?
Your Honor. Lonnie Paris, on July 18th, 2018 and June 9th, 2019, you found pesticide in the bottling area, correct?
Correct.
Further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross on that single question?
Yes, one question. Mr. Paris, those 2 occasions were 2 incidents out of the 24 plus visits that you made to Peony Estates, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This is out of the scope of my redirect.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
The question was about those 2 dates. And so I'm simply asking, were those the only 2 dates or were there other dates where this witness saw this?
Proceed with your question.
Those were the only 2 occasions out of the 24 plus times you visited Peony Estates where you saw any type of pesticide issue, correct?
I saw them specifically on July 16th as well as the 18th in the bottling area.
And so that's a yes, correct?
Other times, I didn't always go into that bottling area.
All right.
Those were the 2 specific times that I've testified to when I can absolutely recall seeing those bug off canisters that I appeared to be new and unopened, scattered around the bottling area where they were not supposed to be.
Thank you, Mr. Paris.
All right, thank you. And the witness may step down. And plaintiff, does that conclude your case in chief?
The plaintiff rests, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll take a brief 5-minute break. I have on my clock right now 11:28, so let's go ahead and call it 11:34 for everyone to be back. And please be prompt. Thank you. All right, everyone, that concludes our break. And just to confirm, do we have everybody back on the plaintiff side?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And then for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Judge Russ, you've returned as well.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, wonderful. All right, well, now we may proceed with the defense. Defense, you may call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Defense calls Blair Osborne to the stand.
Defense, you may proceed.
Ms. Osborne, please state your name for the jury.
My name is Blair Osborne.
Ms. Osborne, what do you do for a living?
Oh, well, I'm a private event planner in Rapid River Valley. I'm the CEO, CFO of my own company called Bliss by Blair Events, which I may add is the #1 most highly recommended event planning services in Rapid River Valley for 3 consecutive years in a row now.
And have you always worked as an event planner?
Yes, I do a little bit of everything, conferences, anniversaries, benefit galas, you name it. So let's see, I've been an event planner for about 5 years now.
And when did you first become familiar with the Peony State owner, Harper Martini?
Well, I first met Harper in spring of 2015. I had double booked an event, which was extremely amateur of me, but I was just starting out with my business. And I was eventually able to use Peony Estates as an alternative venue. And ever since that night, it just laid the foundation for Bliss by Blair and Peony Estates as business partners.
And how long have you been in business with Peony Estate?
I've been partners with the estates for the past 4 years.
And how has it been working with Peony Estates for the past 4 years?
It was really great. I enjoyed being around other people who took event planning as serious as me. The staff was always diligent and attentive and always just went above and beyond to fix any issues that arose.
How many events have you hosted at Peony Estate?
I've hosted 83 events at the estates, along as numerous walkthroughs and pre-event meetings, just a little bit of everything.
And did you experience any issues while working at Peony Estate?
No, I've never witnessed anything other than the highest quality when it comes to hygiene and safety during all of my years being business with them. I've never seen any insects, rats, anything like that. And it just actually surpassed my satisfaction for what I expected an estate to be like.
And what kind of quality did you notice were in place while working at the estate?
They were very high. I mean, do you see me, Blair Osborne, with my name attached to anything other than the highest quality? And honestly, if Peony Estates wasn't up to my standards, I would have never worked there for this long. Like, I couldn't bring my clients onto the property if I thought something was going wrong. Nothing ever concerned me about the production or storage of wine or anything like that over there.
Ms. Osborne, how did you become part of the wedding weekend in question today?
Well, Harper called me on October 6, 2018, and asked me to plan and coordinate her daughter Casey and Casey's fiance Genesis's wedding at Peony Estates. And I immediately agreed. I mean, they're like family to me.
Ms. Osborne, let's move on to June 7th. Where were you on the day of the rehearsal dinner?
Well, I was just sitting and admiring my work as always, and I eventually spotted Genesis. They were pretty far away, so I couldn't see much, but I did see Genesis open a bottle of wine and poured some glasses of it, and I couldn't tell what kind it was, and I'm not sure if anyone else drank it or not.
And what happened later that night?
Well, let's see, around 12 a.m., most of the guests had started to go to their rooms. And before I left, I passed Genesis and a friend of hers, Angel Rodriguez, by one of the cocktail stations. And they seemed to be having a really, really good time.
And did you interact with Genesis and Angel before you left?
Yeah, I just told them to drink some water before they went to bed. I just wanted to make sure they weren't going to be sick or anything the morning of the wedding because I just wanted everything to be perfect that day.
Objection, relevance.
Response.
Your Honor, my witness is just trying to lay how she perceived both Angel Rodriguez and Genesis to be acting, and because she is the wedding planner, it's her duty to make sure that the group especially is ready for the wedding day.
May I be heard?
Yes.
Regardless of this witness's perceptions of the readiness for the wedding, at issue in today's case is whether or not Peony Estates is liable and guilty of negligence, and this is not of consequence in determining facts at issue.
Response on that?
Your Honor, Ms. Osborne is trying to give her perception about how she saw Genesis potentially over drinking, and because of their demeanor of being drunk, she wanted to make sure again that the groom is ready for the procedure of the wedding the next day, since she is in charge of that.
I am persuaded by the plaintiff's argument that this is not relevant to the case at hand, so I will sustain the objection, and you may move forward with your next question.
Ms. Osborne, what happened the morning of June 8th of 2019?
Well, let's see. I got to Peony Estates around 6:30 a.m., which is way too early for me, but duty calls, I guess. And the team was just making sure everything was good to go for the wedding, we eventually got news that Genesis was rushed to the hospital last night, and eventually later on the day, we figured out that she passed away.
And after June 8th of 2019, what was your business relationship like with Peony Estate?
Yeah, unfortunately, due to all the circumstances, I no longer work with Peony Estates currently. It was just a business decision that I had to make, strictly business. It was nothing personal.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Cross from the plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Please do.
Now, Ms. Osborne, on direct, you said that you saw no pests at Peony Estates, correct?
Yes, at the times I was there.
But you never entered the bottling area while you were at Peony Estates, did you?
No, I didn't.
And you mentioned that you saw no pests at Peony Estates, but that could have been because of the use of pesticides, could it not?
Yes, if they wanted to keep the place clean.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Osborne, you're testifying voluntarily today, right?
Yes, I am.
You were not ordered to appear in court today, were you?
No.
And you had not been subpoenaed to testify today, have you?
No, I have not.
Now, you were also paid $22,000 by Harper Martini for planning a wedding that never happened. Isn't that true?
$22,280, yes.
Thank you. So in the course of planning this wedding with Harper Martini, you did overhear a phone call that Martini answered, right?
Yes, I believe so.
But you didn't know who that call was from, did you?
No, I wouldn't have been able to know that.
Right, and you didn't immediately know what it was about either, did you?
No, I did not.
But you didn't need to know either of those things to hear what Harper Martini was saying, right?
No, I heard a little bit of the conversation, yes.
That's right, you did hear what Harper Martini said during that conversation.
Yes, I could recall probably one thing.
Distinctly, you remember Harper Martini saying, "I don't care what that clown Adkins O'Keefe said. Do not waste the employee's time with more training," right?
Yes, I did hear that.
And you also heard Harper Martini say, "Keep the Cara bottle where it is," and "No, don't move the pesticides."
Yes, I heard her say that angrily.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Well, with that, then the witness may step down, and defense, you may move forward with your second witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Austin Lewis to the stand.
Ms. Lewis.
Are you there, Ms. Lewis? Okay, I see.
Yes.
Defense, you may proceed.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Austin Lewis.
Ms. Lewis, what do you do for a living?
I oversee the growing, harvesting, aging, bottling, and I'm also head winemaker of Peony Estates, where I also own 10% of the company.
And what brings you here today?
I'm here to testify on the grounds that the rumors about our wine contaminating our pesticides, contaminating the wine that Genesis Petrillo drank, and that's obviously untrue.
What makes you say that?
Well, I am in charge of all things pesticide usage on our property, so I would think I would know if our wine was able to contaminate the bottle of wine, if our pesticides were able to contaminate the bottle of wine that Genesis Petrillo drank.
Was your wine ever tested by Inspector O'Keefe?
Yes, we actually had 20 samples tested in 2018 and they all came back safe for consumption.
So is it against the rules and regulations to use pesticides?
Of course not. We would have been shut down by now if it was.
And can you tell us about the inspections that occurred at Peony Estates and your interactions with Inspector O'Keefe?
Well, we had an inspection on May 8th. We had an inspection November 2015, actually. And we didn't have one until 3 years later. So we obviously were doing something right. We had one on May 8th and also on July 12th.
Well, let's start with the May 8th.
Okay.
On May 8th.
On May 8th, we were rushing to spray the interior, and we moved the pesticides inside before moving all of the wine out. We didn't use it, but Inspector O'Keefe showed up right as we were cleaning everything up and getting ready to spray. And
did the FDA inspectors shut your business down because of this?
No, like I said, we did not spray any pesticides. We were just moving everything out so that we could spray.
Now, when you mention we, who do you mean by we, Ms. Lewis?
Peony Estates employees. I personally trained these employees in 2015.
And can you tell us about the training that took place?
Yes, our training, we wrap everything up in plastic. We move everything out. We move everything out. Anything that can't be moved, we wrap in plastic. We spray, and we cannot use the facility until 48 hours after we spray. And that's when we bring everything back and unwrap everything.
Now, previously you mentioned there were two other inspections, one on November 5th, 2015, and another 3 years later in July of 2018. I want to talk about each of them separately. Let's begin with the November 2015 inspection. Tell us about that one.
Well, on November 5th, on November, it wasn't anything too upsetting. We just had to move our pesticide storage location further from what we originally had it. And Inspector O'Keefe did inspect our wine cave and our bottling area and everything was fine.
And so you said the wine bottling facility was inspected?
Yes, everything turned out to be fine. Mm-hmm.
Was the storing facility inspected as well?
Yes, and everything turned out to be fine.
So as of November 2015, you guys were considered to have passed that inspection?
Yes, and like I said, we must have been doing something right because we didn't hear back from the inspector until 3 years later.
And when was the next inspection? In 2018?
That was July 12th, 2018.
And were there any violations on this day?
On this day, no. We just, for that day, it went good. Yeah. For that day, we just had to alter a couple of things, but there wasn't anything out of the ordinary.
Now, a few moments ago, you stated that it is okay to use pesticides and it's not against any rules or regulations. Can you tell us about the maintaining of that compliance?
Well, our employees were trained, like I said, to wrap. We'd wrap everything up. We move everything out of the facility. Then we spray and wait 48 hours before we are able to use the facility again. We also remove all of our clothes after pesticide usage, and we wash our hands thoroughly. And this is something that all of Peony Estates employees do.
Now, how often did you use pesticides at Peony Estates?
Whenever we needed to. And then right afterwards, proper procedures were followed.
Are you aware of any situation where your wine tested positive for pesticide?
I haven't witnessed any situation of that sort. Like I said, Inspector O'Keefe tested all of our wines and everything came back safe for consumption.
Can you explain to us why the bottle that was found in the dumpster tested positive?
Well, yes, it wasn't supposed to be thrown, and it was thrown in the pesticide. We have a specific dumpster for pesticides, and for some reason that bottle was thrown in there, and it had been soaking wet. So, of course, it was going to test positive for pesticides, seeing as though it was in the trash can for it.
Were you ever shut down for pesticide storage issues?
No, never.
Were you ever shut down for pesticide usage issues?
No, never. Like I said, we follow procedures.
Was there any inspection that Inspector O'Keefe came where you didn't fix the problem immediately?
No, after every comment he gave us, we immediately fixed the problem.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Any further questions?
Thank you, Counselor. For the plaintiff, Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Lewis, you work for Peony Estates, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you would lose money if this lawsuit is lost, is that correct?
If this lawsuit is lost, that's correct, yeah.
All right, and in your affidavit, you mentioned that Peony Estates was inundated with pests, beetles, mites, and flies, is that correct?
Yes, we had a couple pest issues. That's why we were using pesticides.
And so in October of 2015, Peony Estates started to use a chemical pesticide on the grapevines because organic pesticides did not work. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And in mid-2018, Peony Estates had a severe pest infestation in the wine cave and bottling area. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's when we followed the proper procedures to make sure that we sprayed down efficiently.
In response to the infestation in the wine cave and the bottling area, Peony Estates started using chemical pesticides instead of organic pesticides. Is that correct?
Yes, and like I said, that's when we doubled down on training, and that's when we made sure we followed procedures to make sure no contaminations happened.
You vigorously opposed the use of the chemical pesticides. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say opposed. We definitely, Harper Martini and we definitely had some conflicting views, but we were able to come to an agreement to where our employees were efficiently trained, and I roped off the bottom of the vineyard to make sure that our wine wasn't contaminated.
But in your affidavit, you said that you vigorously opposed Harper's directive that we start using chemical pesticides on the crops. Is that correct?
That's what I stated? Yes, but like I said, it was more of a conflicting views.
Was it conflicting views, or did you believe that you were going to have unsafe levels of pesticide?
Yes, and like I said, that's why I roped off the grapes to make sure we threw away 20% of our production to ensure that our grapes would not be contaminated.
And you feared this because there wasn't any adequate draining in the flat area at the bottom of the vineyard?
Yes, and that's why the grapes were thrown out.
Was there any drainage at all at the bottom of the vineyard?
There wasn't adequate drainage.
In your affidavit, didn't you say that we didn't worry about installing adequate drainage in the flat area, and there wasn't any?
Because we were using organic pesticides beforehand. So like I said, there was not adequate drainage.
Thank you. And in 2018, you told Harper Martini to dispose of the pesticide contaminated grapes, correct?
Yes, I wasn't there for that time that we threw away the grapes, but yes, that's what I instructed her to do.
And Harper had complained about you throwing out too many grapes in the prior years, is that correct?
Yes, like I said, it was a conflicting view, but we knew that we had to do what we could to make sure the grapes didn't get contaminated.
And you were out of town while the grapes were being harvested, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
So when you inspected the amount of grapes harvested, you said you would not have noticed if the pesticide grapes had been mixed in with the normal harvest, is that correct?
The batch didn't look any differently, and no one mentioned to me that the grapes hadn't been thrown out. Everyone knew the procedures, and like I said, I trained these employees myself. So with that said, I'm not 1000% sure because I wasn't there, but everything seemed to be similar to the years when I threw them out.
So you're not sure if Harper threw out the contaminated grapes in 2018, correct?
I'm not 100% sure, but like I said, it looked similar.
All right. And did you ask Harper Martini to retrain employees on proper storage and handling procedures after the May 8th inspection?
I did, yes.
And were you allowed to retrain the employees?
I did retraining the employees, but I did extensively remind the employees of the training that they had previously had.
But you were not allowed to retrain the employees, is that correct?
I didn't retrain them, no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Counselor, any redirect?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. May I proceed? Ms. Lewis, is it against any rule or statute to use chemical pesticides instead of organic pesticides?
No, not at all.
And when you returned from your out-of-town trip, did the 20% crop they usually throw away seem accurate when you guys counted at the end?
Yes, it seemed like an accurate depiction of what I had previously been throwing out. And like I said, no employees mentioned to me that the grapes were not thrown out.
So as far as you're concerned, everything lined up to where it looked like the 20% was thrown away?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Hey, Counselor, any recross?
Briefly, Your Honor. And just to reiterate, you cannot be sure if the contaminated grapes were thrown out. Is that correct?
I wasn't there, so I'm not 100% sure. But like I said, it matches what the results from when I usually throw the grapes out.
And you were not in town at all during the harvesting of the grapes, correct?
No, I was not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, and with that, the witness may step down. And defense, if you would like to proceed with your third witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Cannon to the stands.
Dr. Cannon, and defense when you're ready to proceed.
Hi, Dr. Cannon. How are you?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you. Could you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
Most certainly. The name is Dr. Roger Cannon. I work as an associate consultant for Gardner Consulting Incorporated. I've consulted on many matters for my clients regarding medicine, pharmacology, and toxicology.
What types of cases are you familiar with?
Civil and criminal cases regarding murder, medical malpractice, negligence, even animal abuse. I have clients that are rich, poor, even occasionally the furry variety. I chose a career in consulting because it lets me practice my passion for toxicology. As a young boy, my beloved Schnauzer Rufus was poisoned by antifreeze, so that fueled my passion for toxicology.
Sorry to hear about your dog.
Thank you,
Dr. Cannon. But were you compensated for your work in this case today?
Yes, my company charges a flat rate of $50,000.
Dr. Cannon, can you tell us a little bit about your education?
Definitely. I have a bachelor's in chemistry from Ohio State in 1990 with honors and a medical degree from Harvard with an emphasis in toxicology, summa cum laude.
Outside of consulting, what other medical experience do you have?
Oh golly, a lot of it. I practiced medicine for 23 years. I was the head of toxicology at Mass General Hospital for about 3, and I was a professor right here in Midlands. I find the upkeep of scientific education very important, and I maintained 5 medical licenses in 5 different states.
Are you affiliated with any professional organizations?
Oh yes, I have about 9 affiliations in the medical, legal, and nonprofit communities, including being the president of professional toxicologists.
Do you have any publications within the field of toxicology?
Oh, if I had to say, I'd say about 50, from medicine, toxicology, and treatment. More dear to my heart, I run a blog called Rufus MD, dedicated to my childhood pet, about the newest and most innovative research around the world in toxicology. As I mentioned, education never stops.
Thank you, Dr. Cannon. Now, could you please explain to the jury why you are here today?
Oh, yes, I was asked to assess the results of Dr. Jimin Kwan in regards to the death of Genesis Petrillo.
What documents have you reviewed for your evaluation?
I have reviewed the toxicology report, the death certificate, the alcohol impairment chart, the report from Dr. Kwan, and the affidavit of Angel Rodriguez.
Are the methods that you used to complete your evaluation widely accepted within your field?
Oh, most definitely, yes. Even without access to the body, it's very common to base my knowledge upon documents provided to me. If not, the field for consulting wouldn't exist.
Now, Dr. Cannon, could you describe to the jury your understanding of the events surrounding Genesis Petrillo's death?
Oh, yes. On June 8th, 2019, Genesis was brought to my ER where I worked. Where Kwan worked, Dr. Kwan. I've visited there so many times. Dr. Kwan ordered and administered all of the tests, and then he ruled that the chain of events leading to death was from organophosphates.
What are some of the symptoms that Dr. Kwan notes in his report?
That the patient was unable to walk or speak, he was vomiting and experiencing incontinence.
What did you note about Dr. Kwan's report?
I noted that Dr. Kwan's final conclusion might be inconsistent with the chain of events leading up to Genesis's death. There was no mention of testing after the fact, and there was no medical history, prescription history, or anything that would have exacerbated symptoms from alcohol consumption. Certain labels on different medicines say, do not mix with alcohol. There's a reason for that.
Mr. Hummer, could you please pull up Exhibit 5, which is pre-admitted based on Stipulation 3? Mr. Hummer. Thank you. Now, could you explain what concerns you about this document?
What concerns me about the document is definitely just testing for blood alcohol content. Informally, blood alcohol content in layman terms is how much blood is how much alcohol is inside you. Formally, it is the percent of blood that is concentrated with alcohol. Unfortunately, the blood alcohol content test, in my experience, is very inaccurate to determine the equation of alcohol intoxication, which is more important. Blood alcohol content fluctuates greatly. Alcohol intoxication correlates to multiple factors that a medical professional must never overlook. The amount of alcohol consumed, which was unknown, the rate of consumption, which was unknown, the percent of alcohol in a drink, which was unknown, the body weight and metabolic rate of the consumer, which was unknown, the medical history and medicine consumed prior, which was unknown, when the consumer's peak BAC, blood alcohol content was, which was unknown. From this exhibit, no one can truly determine the true representation of not only Genesis's blood alcohol content, but the state of alcohol intoxication, which truly matters more.
Thank you, Dr. Cannon. Mr. Hummer, can you please remove the exhibit from the screen? Thank you. Dr. Cannon, could you explain to the jury what exactly is peak BAC?
Oh, definitely. Peak BAC is the point of which alcohol in the person's bloodstream is at its highest. Peak BAC is still dependent on similar variables, such as the number of drinks, the potency of those drinks, and the time frame, which were all unknown.
Dr. Cannon, who prepared the death certificate?
Dr. Kwan.
Was there any reference in the death certificate regarding blood alcohol content?
Nope.
Why does this matter in this case?
Unfortunately, as a medical professional, it is protocol to consider all possible alternatives before giving any final conclusion. Dr. Kwan only considered the ingestion of organophosphate pesticide that led to the respiratory failure, ultimately causing the death of Genesis Petrillo. Not only ruling out the possibility of alcohol, but all other factors. The information I am relaying is that there were just too many unknowns to say anything indefinitely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the different levels of alcohol impairment?
I can best do this, I think, by exhibit known as Exhibit 23, the alcohol impairment chart.
Mr. Hammer, could you please pull up Exhibit 23? Let the record reflect that I'm showing the witness a copy of Exhibit 23. Also, let the record reflect that I'm showing opposing counsel Exhibit 23. Dr. Cannon, could you please identify the document that you're seeing?
Yes, this is the alcohol impairment chart that the doctors in Midlands abide by.
And is it a fair and accurate copy as you remember it to be?
Yes, indeed it is.
Let the record reflect that I'm admitting this exhibit into evidence.
Any objection from the plaintiff?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right.
Dr. Cannon, referring to Exhibit 23, what are the symptoms of a blood alcohol content of 0.26% and over?
Okay, any typical person would experience inability to stand or walk, vomiting, incontinence, similar to what Genesis was experiencing.
What about a blood alcohol content of 0.35% and over?
Oh, 0.35%. Those are life-threatening symptoms such as coma and respiratory paralysis. Once again, similar to what happened to Genesis.
Now, Dr. Cannon, what is your conclusion regarding Genesis suffering from something other than organophosphate poisoning?
There is a very, very, very strong probability that the BAC of Genesis was higher than 0.16 at some point in the evening, with all the variability given within BAC and alcohol intoxication due to the numerous factors that I had previously mentioned. We cannot rule that organophosphate was the sole contributor to respiratory paralysis causing death. Genesis's true BAC was uncertain. The reports by Dr. Kwan were superficial and incomplete, in layman terms, not properly conducted. There is not enough weight to tip the scales towards pesticides being the sole cause of death, given the enormous weight of all of the unknowns.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Cannon. No further questioning, Your Honor. Mr. Hammer, could you please remove the stand? Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Plaintiff Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Dr. Cannon.
Hello.
Now, Dr. Cannon, you were hired by Harper Martini for a $50,000 flat fee, correct?
I personally was not hired. I was hired through my company that always, yes, charges a $50,000 flat rate for all consultations.
But you said you charged a $50,000 flat fee in your report, correct?
Yes, due to the fact that the organization I work with charges a $50,000 flat rate. So if they were to request me, yes, that would be what I would charge. But my organization lays the foundation for the prices we charge.
Okay. Let's move on from that. Have you published or worked on any reports regarding organophosphate pesticides like the one in this case?
I have done many reports, definitely on similar topics due to the fact that toxicology is my specialty.
But never on organophosphate pesticides like the one in this case, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, irrelevancy.
Response to the plaintiff.
Your Honor, I am attempting to show that the witness's credibility as an expert in this case is in question because they have never published a single report on organophosphate pesticides when this case specifically deals with organophosphate pesticides.
Defense, any response to that?
May I proceed? Your Honor, not because Dr. Cannon hasn't formally published a publication regarding toxicology does not mean that his testimony is not, or his opinion is not relevant.
Counselor, could you elaborate how that goes to your objection?
The opposing counsel is questioning Dr. Cannon on whether or not they have done a publication within that specific field of organophosphate. Now, Dr. Cannon is an expert within the field, and not because they haven't formally published a specific article or publication on organophosphate does not mean that they are not a credible witness.
Counselor, I'm going to overrule your objection, but a topic like this seems ripe for perhaps redirect when the opportunity arises.
Yes, Your Honor.
Plaintiff, you may proceed.
So you have never published or worked on any reports regarding organophosphate pesticides, correct?
There are multiple different pesticides, organophosphate being one of the many, 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 many. So no, not specifically on that, but I have published numerous on very similar pesticides.
Thank you. Were you able to examine the body of Genesis Petrillo?
No, I was not. But like I said, you don't need to examine to be a consultant. Otherwise, consulting firms wouldn't exist. That is the sole purpose of what I do.
You mentioned in your report that it could have been more accurate had you had access to Petrillo's body.
Yes, unfortunately, the body was cremated.
Now let's move on to your consulting firm, the one that charged $50,000 for their services today.
Yes.
Now, Gardner Consulting, their biggest client is Detsky Roach and Rodent Killer, who make chemical pesticides, correct?
That is one of their many, yes. They do play a big role, but not the only.
Sorry. Can you repeat that? I interrupted you a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Detsky Roach is a big client of the firm, but definitely not the only big client of the firm.
Yes. And you described them as your biggest client, correct?
One of the, yes, I'd say yes, the biggest client.
And your firm would lose them as a client if you found pesticide to be responsible for Genesis Petrillo's death, correct?
There was a possibility of that, yes.
There was a possibility, or you would definitely lose them as a client?
We wouldn't know until after the fact, so there was a possibility of that, yes.
Detsky CEO Eli Harrison told you it was extremely important if you want to continue to have our business that a pesticide not be found responsible for Genesis Petrillo's death, correct?
Yes, that was mentioned, like I said, meaning the possibility.
Okay, let's move on to your conclusions about Dr. Kwan's findings. You stated that Petrillo may have died from alcohol poisoning, correct?
Yes.
But that was extremely unlikely in your words due to their blood alcohol content being only 0.16%.
Yes. When I mentioned that, that blood alcohol reading alone, yes, would have made it unlikely. However, like I have previously mentioned multiple times, without more known information, no one can really say. So with that one testing, yes, it would be unlikely. But without all the other testing that was needed, who's to say?
And you also said it was extremely unlikely because the lowest blood alcohol content you'd ever seen cause a fatality was 0.30%, which is significantly higher than the blood alcohol content that Genesis Petrillo had.
Yes, but like I have previously mentioned now multiple times, no one knows the blood alcohol content at its peak due to the fact that the main test was done hours after arrival, and there were many, many, many unknown factors in not only blood alcohol content, but alcohol intoxication that were never accounted for.
Despite this possible fluctuation or change in the blood alcohol content of Genesis Petrillo, you've never seen a body with less than 0.30% blood alcohol content that had died from alcohol poisoning, correct?
That is scientifically impossible, likely to be impossible. However, like I said, that correlation cannot be made accurately to Genesis.
Defense. I'm sorry. Defense, could you speak a little louder?
My apologies, Your Honor.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Defense, do you have an objection there? Was that?
My objection was to the previous question asked and answered.
I think at this point we'll just move on if everyone's okay with that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Like I said, that reading cannot be accurately correlated to just Genesis's all-time reading during this incident due to the fluctuation. So that just doesn't make sense of a question for you to ask a medical professional.
Okay. And you admit that alcohol poisoning cannot explain the presence of pesticide in Petrillo's stomach and blood, correct?
Can you repeat that question? Alcohol poisoning cannot explain the pesticide?
Yes.
They're two different things. So that would be correct. I'm not really understanding what you're asking here.
Yes, they are two different things, Dr. Cannon. You contend that alcohol poisoning could have been the cause of death for Genesis Petrillo. However, it does not explain the presence of pesticide in Petrillo's stomach and blood, correct?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. Defense, any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Well, with that, the third witness may step down. And defense, does that conclude your case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Well, let's take another 5-minute break before closings. I have 12:14, so we'll return at 12:20 to give the benefit of the couple seconds. So see you all at 12:20. All right, everybody, I've got 12:20 on my clock. So plaintiff, are you here and ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and Judge Rust, you're here with us also, yes?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, well, at this time, I would encourage everybody, if you would like, to switch your view back over to that speaker view so that you can see the attorney who is going to be closing first and foremost on your screen and not me. Again, a reminder to everyone, if you are not the closing attorney, to ensure that you are muted and your video is off and all that great stuff. And with that, plaintiff, you may proceed with your closing argument.
Your Honor, throughout the duration of this trial, we, the plaintiff, have showcased just how Peony Estates violated Section 12-100 of the Midlands Building Code by failing to put sufficient restrictions and precautions in place to protect the contamination of food, food contact surfaces, and food packaging materials by pesticides, and by failing to store pesticides at the winery in a manner that's sufficiently protected against the contamination of food, food contact surfaces, and food packaging materials by pesticides. We have also proved that the staff of Peony Estates knew or should have known about the code violations, and that these violations directly caused the death of the late Genesis Petrillo. We have showed you just how the accident waiting to happen at Peony Estates did happen. During this trial, we, the plaintiff, called upon Riley Adkins O'Keefe, Sam Arnold, and Lonnie Paris to prove beyond a preponderance of evidence that Peony Estates acted negligently. Riley Adkins O'Keefe, a health and safety inspector with the FDA, testified that Peony Estates has previously had wine contaminated by pesticides, and that she also testified on May 18th, 2019, weeks before Petrillo's and Soto's wedding, Peony Estates was found to be in serious violation of not one, but 4 different points of violation. Ms. Adkins O'Keefe found pesticides in the bottling area. She found the drain to not be clear. She found a bottle of Cara wine next to pesticides that were the same kind that Genesis consumed on the night that she died. And she found out that employees were confused about safe handling procedures for the pesticides. We next called Sam Arnold to the stand. Sam Arnold testified that the kitchen at Peony Estates was never up to professional standards, unless, of course, their inside source with the FDA said there was a surprise inspection coming up. Ms. Arnold also testified that she found pesticide containers in the kitchen not once, but twice while working on this specific event. On the second such incident, it would happen on June 7th, 2019, or the day of the rehearsal dinner, the night before Genesis Petrillo died. And lastly, we called Lonnie Paris to the stand. Paris testified that he found pesticides near a bottle of Cara wine the same wine that he later saw Harper Martini give to Genesis Petrillo, the same wine that killed them. Your Honor, the defense wants you to believe that we cannot be sure whether negligence actually occurred, that maybe Genesis Petrillo died from something other than pesticide poisoning. However, this is not accurate. The facts are these. Peony Estates violated numerous statutes such as keeping pesticides in the kitchen or in the bottling area and not properly training their employees on safe handling procedures. These statutes are intended to protect the public and their well-being. The improper storage of these pesticides and the omitting of employee training directly caused the type of harm the statutes were intended to prevent. And lastly, that Genesis Petrillo, as has been previously stipulated, was a member of the statute's protected class, as according to Wandro versus Cornworth from 1955. And with the proof for all 4 of these stipulations, we proved that Peony Estates acted in negligence, which directly contributed to the harm and death of Genesis Petrillo. The plaintiff rests. Your Honor, you're currently muted.
I'm sorry. One more question before you step away, and I should know the answer to this myself, but I apologize if I don't. Do you anticipate any rebuttal to the defendant's closing argument, if such thing is allowed in this jurisdiction?
I believe we are able to do rebuttal.
All right, well, I'll afford you the opportunity at the conclusion of the defendant's closing if you would like. And there's no requirement that you do so. Defense, you may proceed when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Jabari McRae, and along with my co-counsel, we represent the esteemed Peony Estates in today's case. And today's case was about two things. One, did my client violate the statute? And two, did my client's actions directly cause the unfortunate death of Genesis Petrillo? But make no mistake, members of the jury, this case is no longer about facts and justice. It's about one goal, the goal to assign blame. This case is only about blame and who to blame and how to blame, not about who truly deserves blame. This case is about forcing pieces together, pieces that just won't fit. Now, before I go any further, I do want to take a moment and send my condolences to the Petrillo family. I can only imagine what it is like to lose a loved one. But grief and tragedy are no reason to point the finger or search for someone to assign blame while ignoring the facts. And that's exactly what the plaintiff is doing in today's case, trying to piece together a puzzle that lacks all the necessary pieces. No matter how sad the situation is, we are only here today to talk about the facts. And the fact is that on November 5th, Inspector O'Keefe inspected Peony Estates and was so content with what he saw, that he didn't feel the need to return for 3 more years. Why? Because everything was in compliance. That's why. Everything was up to code and no health violations in sight. If lives were in danger, if people were dying from Peony Estates wine, if there was imminent threat to Peony Estates customers, do you think that a federal inspector would wait 3 whole years to come back for a follow-up? Of course not. Inspector O'Keefe had no need to follow up because they broke no rules. They violated no statute. That's why Inspector O'Keefe didn't return for 3 more years. You heard that on May 8th, they were put on a 45-day probation period, which meant Riley O'Keefe was going to follow up within 45 days. So what does that tell you about the November 5th inspection? The inspection that needed no follow-up. It tells you that the inspection went great enough to where Inspector O'Keefe did not return for 3 more years. You learned the very next inspection took place on July 12th. And what happened during this inspection? No code violations, 0 health violations. Riley O'Keefe conducted this inspection and found no safety threats. This was the second inspection at Peony Estates. So at this point in time, Peony Estates had a perfect record of passing inspections, a perfect record of being in compliance, a perfect record of properly storing and properly using pesticides. 2 out of 2 inspections were passed with flying colors. The plaintiff just gave a statement saying that previous wine that Riley was tested for pesticides and those levels were unacceptable. That's not true. Riley O'Keefe testified during the direct examination that those wine levels were safe and acceptable. The truth is, the only issue they ever had was a one-time thing, and that was on May 8th. So that means that 2 out of the 3 visits went perfect. That is 2 out of 3, ladies and gentlemen. That means that more times than not, Peony Estates followed the rules. That means more times than not, Peony Estates passed the inspections. That means more times than not, Peony Estates was in compliance with regulations. So now we have to think about the rules for determining liability in today's case. Now, there are 2 different elements the plaintiff had to prove, and they failed to prove both. So when you ask yourself, is it more likely than not that the defendant violated the statute? Think about what you heard today. You heard from Blair Osborne, who said that she has thrown over 80 different engagements at Peony Estates. And it's a reason why she continued to do business with them over the years. She told you it's because of the exceptional quality of the venue, specifically because of the exceptional quality when it comes to cleanliness and safety of their wine and all other facilities. This is an an in-person eyewitness testimony of someone who over years, over 80 different occasions, who can reliably attest to the conditions of Peonia Estates. This is not someone who's only been there once or twice. This is someone who can attest to years of following the rules, years of setting the golden standard, years of being documented as dependably exceeding expectations, not just on one or two occasions, consistently. And as the defense in today's case, we bear no burden, members of the jury. We have no obligation. The plaintiff is the only one who has the burden today. Despite that, we brought additional witnesses here today who were able to testify to the conditions of Peonia Estates. So again, think about what you learned. You learned Peonia Estates is the epitome of exceptional quality regarding hygiene and safety. The plaintiff is trying to get you to ignore the fact Peonia Estates passed more inspections than not, followed more rules than not. It's evident they ignored those facts. So when you think about more likely than not, think about anything greater than 50%. Anything greater than 50% is more likely than not. So now think about the FDA inspections at Peonia Estates. There were 3 inspections, and the plaintiff's own witness stated that 2 out of those 3 visits went great with no violations. Even if they had a slight issue on May 8th, that still means more likely than not, my client abided by the rules. More likely than not, my client did not violate the rules. You heard from Austin Lewis, an employee at Peonia Estates, who told you she spearheaded the entire transition into pesticide use. And within that transition, they implemented proper procedures and took all the necessary precautions. It's not against the rules to use pesticides, members of the jury. Using pesticides is a requirement to keep pests out. There's no rule against that. The only rule is that you must take proper precautions, which is what Peonia Estates always has done, members of the jury. The wine was not contaminated when Genesis drank it. You even heard that the only Cara wine bottle that was tested was found in the dumpster full of pesticides, steeped and soaked in pesticides all night. This was the trash they used to dispose of pesticides. So of course, the wine bottle they fished out was soaked in pesticides. We know Austin Lewis and Peonia Estates threw out 20% of each crop just as another precaution. Ask yourself, what was so different about the Cara wine opposed to the other wine consumed that evening? If they were using pesticides improperly, it's safe to say the other wine would be contaminated also. But guess what, members of the jury? All the leftover food and wine on that evening was tested. And this test didn't come from a pesticide-soaked trash can. And you want to know the results of those tests? Pesticide-free. They tested all food and drinks. No other wine on the entire premises of Peonia Estates tested positive for pesticides. This failure alone means they failed to meet their burden, ladies and gentlemen. The law states the plaintiff must prove all burdens by preponderance of the evidence, and unless they prove both, means you must find my client not liable. The fact that out of 3 visits to Peonia Estates, Inspector O'Keefe found 2 inspections to be in order means more likely than not, Peonia Estates did not violate the statute, and therefore the law sets you out. You must find Peonia Estates not liable. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And for the plaintiff, do you have a rebuttal?
I do, Your Honor. Your Honor, this case and this trial is it's only about whether negligence occurred or not. Negligence is defined as a category of offenses involving the violation of a statute that is designed to protect the public from a specific type of harm. And in this case, the death of Genesis Petrillo would classify as harm. Genesis Petrillo did not have to die for for negligence to be proven. It is extremely unfortunate that Peonia Estates did not stay up to standards at all points in time to protect Genesis from dying. And the Cara wine, which killed Petrillo, was disposed of before the rest of the batch was able to be tested by police and by the examiners. The truth of the matter is that not only one piece of the puzzle is here, we have all the pieces of the puzzle for this case. All the parts of negligence are here, and they've all fallen into place. The plaintiff rests, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counselor. All right. Well, let me switch myself back over here. All right. So now what we're going to do is that Judge Russ and I are going to put together our comments. I do have one favor to ask for both sides, both plaintiffs and both witnesses and the attorneys. if you could reintroduce yourself, just stating whether you were, or let's just go in the order that you open, middle, closing, and then for both sides very quickly for the attorneys first, and then we'll do the same with the witnesses. And for the witnesses, if you could give your name and then also the name of the role that you played. I believe that will help both Judge Russ and I in assigning outstanding attorneys and witnesses. Thank you. And we'll proceed with the plaintiff first. Thank you.
Sorry, I got it. My name is Cameron Viss, and I did the opening arguments.
My name is Joshua Wagner, and I was the middle attorney for plaintiff.
My name is Victoria Hofflinger, and I was the closing attorney for the plaintiff.
For defense, my name is Nadia Abdurrida, and I did the opening.
Hi, my name is Jakaya Fletcher, and I was the middle attorney for defense.
Good afternoon. My name is Jabari McRae. I was the closing attorney for the defense.
And now for the witnesses, please. And we'll again go with the plaintiff first, if we could.
I'm Lauren Hedrick, and I played Riley Atkins O'Keefe.
Sorry. I'm Sophia Ekstrom, and I played Sam Arnold.
I'm Colton Hughes, and I played Lonnie Paris.
I'm Nicole Stringer, and I played Blair Osborne for the defense.
Najima Mills, and I played Austin Lewis.
I'm Sarah Cuvion, and I played Dr. Cannon, but my name also might be Bryant. Like, I go by Bryant, so I'm not sure like what it would be in the system.
All right, thank you, everyone. And if you'll allow Judge Russ and us and myself just a minute or two to put together our score sheets, and then we will come back together for comments. Thank you. Hey, all right, everybody. And Judge Russ, Grace, are you here?
I'm here.
And are you finished, or are you still marking up your score sheet?
I'm finished.
All right, great. Do you want to lead out with comments, or I can? I'm kind of tired of talking.
You can start.
Thanks. All right. Well, look, first off the bat, I want to say great job to everybody, especially on dealing with the oddities of doing this via Zoom. I know for any of you that have done this kind of in a live courtroom type setting before, this is quite a bit different. I can say from my side, on the judging side, it is a lot more challenging. And you all rose to that challenge and you overcame it. I mean, I don't think that we had any really severe hiccups outside of a couple of, bits where Zoom decided to interrupt someone in the middle of asking a question or providing a response or something like that. but you all handled the format exceptionally well. With that, I guess I'll move over to my favorite thing for the trial. And really I have to say my favorite thing for the trial for both sides was the witnesses. I think that for all the witnesses across the board, you all did a wonderful job of really developing the witnesses and allowing them to, when on direct, allowing them to take the forefront. And then also for crosses on both sides, I think that you had some very effective cross techniques, but the witnesses to me were exceptionally strong in this trial. I'll move over to a little bit of critique. For both sides, I would encourage you to revisit a little bit on how you are dealing with evidence. I think that we only had 2 exhibits that were actually brought up on screen. And I think especially in light of using Zoom and doing trials in this way, there's such an opportunity to really get that evidence out in the forefront. And I would encourage you to do so. Also with using evidence and exhibits, make sure that you're working through the process so far as entering exhibits and everything else. I know that for the plaintiff side, you had a couple of bits of evidence that were talked about early in the trial, but those were never actually entered. And the same thing with expert witnesses. I think for both sides, you had a witness that should have been an expert witness, but neither of those expert witnesses were tendered. So I would encourage both sides to to revisit those evidentiary grounds and ensure that you're checking all the boxes. There wasn't an objection from either side, but had there been one, I would have been forced to sustain it until that proper ground had been covered. But overall, a great trial from both sides. I hadn't yet really read this material in as much detail as either of you have, but I felt walking away from this trial that I knew what was going on. I knew who the parties were. I understood from both sides what your case was. And I think anytime that happens, that is an effective trial. So you both put forth an effective trial, and you should feel good about where you are right now. And with that, Grace?
Yeah, great job, everybody. I just have some very general comments that mostly apply to everybody. For speeches, make sure you try to get off notes as much as possible. And if you can, look into the camera, since that makes it seem like there's eye contact. For directs, you can simplify some of your questions to make it more conversational. Some of you did really well making it sound more like a conversation. Others of you can work on that and make it sound a little less formal. For cross-examination, make sure your questions are very, very short and to the point. When you have really long questions, it gets confusing and the witnesses were able to really run on you. Witnesses, make sure you're not being too confrontational on cross. It's okay to just admit yes or no sometimes. And there were times where it made you look a little bad on cross. If you were really friendly with your attorney on direct and were answering questions, and then if you would get really defensive on cross, that would hurt your credibility. So I think that was one of the biggest things for me. I think that's all I got. I filled out a comment sheet, so you will all get more specific comments.
Would that does anyone have any questions for either Grace or I? We never introduced ourselves. I'm a 3L here at Wake Forest Law. So thank you all for joining us for this invitational today. Great job. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but otherwise, I think that's it for round 1. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, folks.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. All right, with
Thank
that, you're welcome. All right, we'll see you all later.